Okay.
Oh, we got Liz.
Welcome to another installment of Exploring Consciousness with the Nouveau group, with all these other lovely consciousness explorers. And our topic today is judgment, all the different heads of judgment. So we will be exploring whatever you guys want to explore, but what is judgment? What is it not? How can we use judgment to create, to out-create? How does it bring up old wounds? How can we heal old wounds and all of that? But before we go into the exploration itself, I've got the book by Salom. Salom Eisenberg. And I met the lady, we had her on the Zoom before. I've met the lady in at the pyramids, at the Bosnian pyramids a couple of years ago. And when she heard, she's not going to make it today, but when she heard we're talking about judgment, so she's got a page here about judgment in her book, which I'm going to read to kick it off. And then we'll see what that brings up, and then we'll take it from there, okay?
Okay.
So, Judgment by Salom Eisenberg. Everyone has their own truth to accept another's point of view, even though it may differ from our own on any level. It does not have to make our point of view wrong in the face of his or hers. Each person sees truth in their own way, perhaps from viewing the subject from different perspectives or points of views, based on the angle they see it from. And one who feels strong enough in his convictions does not need to force their position upon another. Judgment is rejecting what has not been seen by the person, judging who may need proof to accept it. To look down upon another's truth is to judge it. To listen to and understand or accept another's view is to possibly see another part of the whole, another side to the story. Doing this does not make either side right or wrong. But to be able to accept the larger truth is to see the Creator in all. So that's by Salom Eisenberg, and her book is called Mastering Emotions, and it is now available on Amazon. So thanks, Salom, for that. Has that brought something up for anyone in order to kick up the conversation?
What it brought up for me is, I liked it very much, by the way, Salom, if you're going to listen to this. I really did enjoy that, thank you. We don't use really our infinite point of view enough. And this is just personally speaking and what I've experienced as well in others. And we arrive very quickly at conclusions and judgments, if you like, without looking at the many layers that there are there.
This is important, you know. And you know, if you look into the dictionary, it gives you the definition of judgment is the formation of an opinion after consideration or deliberation. You know, so that's not a negative connotation. And I think one of the biggest things that we get mixed up with judgment is we confuse it for our predetermined programs. You know, so sometimes we may have been conditioned to respond in a certain way. I grew up with a very racist parent, and that was bred into me from very, very young. And so I noticed as a young man, all of these instant judgments were coming up, but they weren't really judgments. They were preconditioned opinions. I think that's a little bit different to a judgment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. Actually, you know, there's a couple of things. Laura mentioned conclusion, okay, which is very important, you know, because this is what the question that lends itself to ask is, you know, what is actually judgment? Judgment can be a conclusion, just like what you said now, based on our filters, our belief system, you know, and the thing that I want to add to this is with a judgment, what we're doing is with a conclusion, we're taking ourselves out of infinite possibility. As soon as we are judging something, and as soon as we are concluding a certain perspective, we are losing the bigger picture. We're losing sight of what else is actually possible there.
Yeah.
And then going back to Matty again, you just said something very important too, because you said judgment is not just negative. There's positive judgment too. And that is equal to limiting to the negative judgment, if you wish. No,
Absolutely.
you know, in a relationship, you know, when you say, oh, I love men with beards and with dark hair, you know, and that's it. Now, as you conclude this, as you go into judgment, you totally eradicate the possibility that you could actually like a blonde, blue-eyed guy too, right? Not even look at them, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. And judgment, that's the thing with it we have the word itself has been given a negative connotation, but it actually isn't a negative word in its entirety. And judgment, you know, the way that most people understand it, it really does. It just validates the finite point of view. Because you know, you come to a point and you say, right, that's as far as I'm willing to go. This is my opinion and it will not change. And you set yourself up for a finite point of view that way, you know. But judgment can also be used to look at a situation and for the opposite. You may not be able to experience the infinite in an instant, but at least you can see where a situation is finite in a way that doesn't serve you. So judgment really is the process of discernment with a process of consideration behind it. If you wanted to do it,
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Use judgment as a process of discernment to look at, you know, what feels light and what feels heavy, what feels right for you and what doesn't, you know, so that you can actually have choices. You know, the problem is, though, unfortunately, that so many people just misidentify, misapply judgment with something concreted in, and there's no way over it, you know, there's no way to choose something different. Yeah.
Yeah, they sort of trap themselves with the one view. I mean, there are times, I think like Matty was saying, you have to make an instant judgment on something. You have to make an instant decision, maybe. You have to use your judgment at times. But, I mean, maybe with children, you know, and whether something is safe or not. So there are times where you have to call in judgment quite quickly. But you can always go back and re-choose at a later date with something else.
Is it judgment or is it experience? So when you say to your child, don't touch that.
Well, I'm making a judgment call at that time for that. Whether you do want to use another word for that, I don't know. I'm making a decision about something instantly. You have to, don't you? Sometimes you have to make an instant decision about something. Whether that really comes under the definition of judgment, I don't know. It is a judgment on something. What I'm saying is, like Matty's saying, it's not always negative. Sometimes it's just, you have to use judgment in life, don't you? Day to day.
You do.
So what if, as we are consciousness explorers and awareness explorers, what if we call it awareness?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a much better word.
Subject to your level of awareness.
Yeah, and what is now the difference between awareness and judgment? Andrea, you need to unmute, darling. Yeah.
No, I raised my hand, so I don't want to butt in. I thought I'd rather raise my hand, sorry.
I can't see that raising hand business. Yeah.
I forgot you all.
Hello.
I'm joking. So for me, judgment is a concreted point of view that is based on data, that is based on the past, that we already collected and programmed into our blueprint and bone marrow and agreed upon, which is taking us away from the I am present moment, from the multidimensional being, for the infinite being. So it's already programmed into us. So in order to reverse it, if you will, we now have learning tools and techniques and modalities and whatever the universe and the earth and the galaxy gives us. So we reset the blueprint, we reset that to the I am present moment. Because if we are in the I am present moment, simply, like, you know, we sometimes we say, even Andrew says, so how do we stay there? That means no judgment, no conclusions, no hierarchy, equality. So the judgment is a point of view that we already agreed to, that is like a concluded point of view that we already agreed upon, and that is programmed into us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for that. So that's basically going in line with the programming and, you know, with the limitations at times, but at the same time giving us the focus. Now, looking back at what is the difference between awareness, who else got an idea of how we can define difference between awareness and judgment?
Yeah, I do. So I think with awareness and judgment, so the main thing would be your participation, wouldn't it? I mean, obviously you have to participate, to be aware of something, but making a judgment requires volition on your own part. It means that you have to actually actively formulate an opinion of your own based upon your own circumstances, whereas awareness can just be quite all-encompassing or passive. But judgment is most certainly not passive, is it? It's not necessarily aggressive, but it's not passive.
Okay, so this is what I was trying to get at. You just said it now. The difference between awareness and judgment is the emotional attachment to it, the life force, if you wish, that you are investing into a judgment, the emotional, you know, intensity at times. That's when it becomes, when we go out from awareness and we go into judgment. And again, it's neither right nor wrong, you know.
Which is completely dependent upon all of your all of the things that you've been around before. You know, everything that's happened to you before, you know, clouds or influences your perception.
Yeah, yeah.
So, can I come in on something? Yeah.
Go, Norman. Yeah.
Just listening to the conversation there, it made me think of a thing in business. I don't know if people have come across it, called transactional analysis. Does anyone come across this before? Transactional analysis?
No.
And basically what it's saying is, within us, there's three types of people within us. There's the parent at the top, then there's the adult in the middle, and then the child at the bottom. Now, if I am having a dialogue with Martina, we're on the kind of wavelength of parent to parent, that's fine. If you're on the level of adult to adult, that's fine. And if you're on the child to child within you, you're on the same level. But if I put on a kind of parent down to child to Martina, you naughty girl, you've been very bad, you know.
I might like it. No,
you got judgment coming in there. But if you're actually discussing adult to adult, you've got awareness and you've got discussion, which is all done in a nice sort of way. And I suppose you've got emotions coming in there. And then you might conclude the judgment, which might not have been your original judgment in the first place.
Yeah, and this is a great example what you're showing us here when we go into definition. Okay. Because every type of definition, every niching, every identification with a particular role, with a particular archetype, puts us automatically into judgment. You know, where we're sort of solidifying a certain point of view. It's all good, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just for us, or for people who are interested in exploring consciousness from a really sovereign, neutral perspective, it is a really good idea to look at when you get, even if you get passionate, it's still a judgment, you know? Because as you get into your passionate, you know, sort of setup, you sometimes lose the awareness of how it is being received by others. Yeah, it's a different angle to that. Does that bring anything up for anyone who wants to say something to that?
I'd like to chime in, Martina.
Go for it.
Because I'll try and say it in a way that, so awareness for me is like, a lot of people ask me, so Andrea, so how long have you been doing this? So like, I'm sure people ask you, like, been doing a lot of psychic surgeries this week, and this is how do you know this? How do you know that? And what you're talking about is awareness. Is like awareness is when you totally accept, meaning you don't judge, but you totally accept what are you being given. Yeah. So when you act upon awareness, that means you are in the abundant flow, or you are in the flow, however you wish to say that in your world. It's like when you act upon things, whether it is, somebody might say, oh, that's a bad thing, but it's an awareness, right? So when I was very little, I was aware of things, and something is going in my life at the moment I can't talk about, but I'm aware of it, and I'm going to receive it and act upon it, okay? Because I know that's there, and I'm going to receive it. When you receive it totally, you don't judge it. That means, you know, after that, oh, that's why this happened, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, like you say, when I was very little, some people or whoever, doesn't matter, try to suppress that. And I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm sure there are, if somebody's going to listen to this conversation, or you guys, I'm sure when you were aware and you said, when I was a little, I voiced that awareness, and I was told no.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Well, and thanks again for mentioning that specific word, acceptance, you know, because I just want to say something to acceptance. If you look at the energy of acceptance, that still implies a judgment, as if there is something to accept. So I usually like to use allowance.
That's what I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Allowance. Sorry.
I'm not correcting. I'm just saying. You know,
yes. No. I agree with you. Yes, allowance. That's what I'm saying. When you allow the awareness to flow. Yeah. Sorry. That's what I meant. Yeah. That's what you were saying. Yeah.
And the other thing you just said is judgment, as it is actually. If you think about it, the nature of judgment is duality, just like what Salome said in her book, different points of views. So it's almost impossible to not have ever felt judged or judged others, or you know, we still do it in unawareness all the time. Okay, so this is just something like we have to live with polarity, we have to live with duality, because that is what creates. Okay, it's just the next level. When we're talking about the next level of creation, of out creation, we can play in the playground of allowance instead of judgment and inclusiveness of other people's points of views. But I want to ask a question along those lines. How does it feel? And that goes to everyone, because we have all been there. How does it feel to be judged?
For me, in the past, was not so good, because, you know, you are a child, of course, not so good. But for the past 2 weeks, something so big happened in my life, like huge thing. And I've learned, which is what you said about awareness, like, okay, I'm going to be aware, but I'm going to be aware from, I'm going to take a step back, but I'm going to be aware. So if you want to judge me, I allow it.
Okay, give me one word. Give me one word, what it feels like when you are being judged. And that question goes to everyone.
I would say not even just allowance, but it's
one word.
Like
misunderstood, dismissed.
Okay.
Inferior.
Okay, inferior, misunderstood, dismissed. What else?
Pissed.
Belittled.
Pissed, yes.
Oppressed.
Yes.
Oppressed.
Belittled.
Belittled, yeah.
And I say, could care less.
Couldn't care less.
Ambivalent.
I couldn't get into one word, but I think the older you get, I think if you're being judged, it doesn't matter. Couldn't couldn't care tuppence penny or anything.
Yeah.
When you're
Takes some
younger,
getting-
perhaps you're a bit about when you get judged. When you're earlier, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
It takes some getting used to, though, doesn't it, Norman? You know, it does take some getting used to.
It
Oh
does.
yeah, no, I accept that. I accept that.
So let's take all these energies and just destroy and uncreate those, yeah? Let's let those go. And now see, and this is what I love about judgment, you know, how can we create with the judgment that other people reflect onto us? How can we actually create with that?
Oh, I have a good one.
Take it into our, you know, make it an advantage.
Yeah, I have a good one here. So a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about my little trip at Her Majesty's pleasure, and that was a remarkable one because instantly, I mean, if you meet me and you meet my family and you meet the people around me and you see how I live, then you'll formulate a certain judgment about me. But if you were to look at a government computer that lists my previous this, that, and the other, then you have a completely different picture of me. And so when I was taken into custody on that particular occasion, and then go to court, go to prison, you know, everybody that encountered me had read that file, you know, and I thought to myself, and I actually went on the run for a year as well. I went and lived in the mountains in Wales, and it was a crazy experience. But I was expecting about 5 years in prison, and I was formulating in my mind how I can find a way to reduce that, you know, how I could find a way. And at this point, I was a consciousness explorer. I discovered Andrew. I think it was 2015. I went to prison, and I was, you know, I was really on the way. I was really on the way, and so what I decided was, when I get into prison, I'm just going to be myself, no matter how frightening that might be. I'm going to be myself, and so I was as friendly as I could be to everybody I encountered, and never got involved in any form of arguments or bitching, and it ended up working right in my favor, and it was on my mind the whole time. I was like, you know, thinking about how all these different people perceive me and how I can keep it sweet. And I did end up getting released after 6 months, and on a tag as well, which I wasn't supposed to be given because I absconded. I know it's a long story, but for me, that's one of the times I've used judgment in my favor recently that really worked.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. That's a great example. What else? Who else got an example, like how to use other people's judgment to your advantage?
I've got the word, Martina,
Opportunity. Yeah, thanks. Opportunity. Thank you.
Opportunity, because every judgment, if you receive the judgment, you have to receive it, right? Because if you don't, then you already judge the judgment. So for me, judgment can be an opportunity to say, okay, not saying, oh, I'm going to get back at you, but an opportunity, first of all, to receive it. That takes a very strong person to receive it. And number two, okay, so what can I create with this? How can I, build business out of this? How can I create a poem out of this? And I did this.
This is a
many times.
Matt teacher said to us now to actually create an opportunity around it, and he's obviously, you know, got out of prison and did all of that. So absolutely.
Yeah, but it's in business, it's in every single time.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whatever is going on in the world now.
Yeah.
Everything is a judgment.
And you mentioned receiving, and I want to come back to that. Okay, so remind me of that. Let's just see if anybody else has something, you know, where they actually use the judgment to create and out-create the judger, if you wish.
You could use it as a mirror.
Yep.
So, and sort of, it can be a two-way mirror. So they're judging me, but there must be something in me that's accepting that judgment to actually see it, hear it as true. But also it must be something in them making them feel perhaps insecure and needing to judge me, I suppose. So it's like a two-way thing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And this is, you know, the good old mirror principle, which we can, as consciousness explorers, can always use. And again, it's important. Sorry, I don't know your name, darling.
I'm Lynn. I'm Laura's friend. She
Lynn.
Hi. Yeah. Hi.
Thanks, Lynn, for mentioning that, you know,
Yeah.
because as a consciousness explorer, you know, who is interested in change and sovereignty and mastery and all of that, we are very willing to look at that from a place of curiosity, and certainly not from a place of self-judgment. And every trigger that is being brought to light is an opportunity to out-create ourselves. And Lynn, I just want to say something in addition to that is, when we go into self-judgment, how often, because we're all very psychic beings, how often when we judge ourselves, we are picking up judgments of others, and they can come in forms of expectations, projections. You know, it doesn't even have to be a plain out "you an idiot" judgment type thing. Expectations are huge judgments that weigh very heavily on us, and they can really incarcerate ourselves, where we then go into self-judgment. And that is something to look out for too, you know?
It's extremely insidious, Martina. Extremely insidious.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and I've had a recent thing with that as well. There's a friend of mine who's a really good friend for many years. And we were kind of on the same path at the beginning, and he started to become a little bit different, and he's kind of anti-spirituality. And I found myself, when I was posting things publicly or whenever I would say anything in his company, I toned down what I would say in order to fit in with how I thought he would be comfortable. And then that actually managed to work its way into my dialogue, my inner dialogue. And then I wasn't posting on Facebook. I wasn't answering certain things just because I thought, oh, he's going to see that, and then I'm going to get some sort of a bullshit comment, you know? And I actually had to end that friendship, much to everyone's bewilderment. No one had an idea what I was doing. Why are you doing that? It's crazy, you know? But for me, it insidiously got itself into my thought process.
Yeah.
Well, then you surrendered the authentic you.
I gave away my free will to him, absolutely.
Yeah, your authentic you and your sovereignty as well.
Absolutely.
But we've all we've all done it, certainly. And you're right, it comes in so many forms. It comes in a look sometimes. And you're right about how insidious it is, and how we don't even realise at times, speaking from my own experience.
And a lot of it's pure imagination. Sorry, and a lot of it's pure imagination as well. You know, we create these characters, we have them in our head, they're people that we know, and we imagine how they will respond to things that we do, say, and act. And sometimes it can be going on without us even, we're not consciously aware of it. It's just going on in the background. That's how insidious it is, you know, actually right in there in the core process of your thought.
Well, Matty, I wonder if that is truly the case, that you don't know what's going on with the other person. And I want to bring the false kindness into this, because I think we're innately kind, okay? And I think we rather limit ourselves and speak less of our truth because we have an awareness that other people could not hear the real truth, because they're so, well, the real truth, there is no real truth, so that's the wrong way of saying it, but could not hear a different perspective. So it's this type of where we're holding back because we don't want to hurt somebody, which is obviously crap, because we, you know, we got away with that before, but we're no longer getting away with that now, because this is the time to step into true leadership, authentic leadership, and it is a matter of you being true to yourself so that you then inspire others to do the same.
Absolutely. And, you know, and the thing is that it's, I mean, in that particular circumstance, for me, what it was, believe it or not, that I wanted to avoid was discussion. And you can see I like to talk a lot, but you know, it would have required, every time I would have said something, there would have, because he's a very intelligent man, extremely intelligent man, that there would have been an instant retort with a rhetoric that's been planned, you know? And it was those kind of interactions, you know, like on Facebook, you've all done it. You write something sincere, everyone you know is attacking you, you know? And you know.
Would you say that is actually choice?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
That's true.
And so in order, you know, one has to make a counter choice, of course, dependent upon one's judgment of the situation.
So these are two different energies. When you do that, you say less, so you don't say what you want to say, but you do it out of choice because you have an awareness what's going on with the other person. That's very different. That's a neutral, sovereign way of working. That's not going to bite you in the ass. It's
No,
to make yourself smaller, you know. So again, we have awareness and judgment here. We have, you know, when you do it from a place of awareness, you just know you're neutral. You just say, okay, I better shut up because they can't receive it anyway. Okay, which brings me back to receiving in a moment. Or you say, oh my God, I have to stop. I have to do this and this and that, and I have to hold back, and then I start getting stomach cramps and all that. That would be a judgment where we're judging ourselves through the judgment of others. We're taking on the judgment of others.
And a judgment can be a signpost that you're in a situation that maybe is not great for you. So it doesn't have to be something where you say, oh God, look, I messed up. That was all my fault. Why did I act that way? For me, I like to say, right, well, that's a situation that I either, if I'm going to have it again, I need to know how I'm going to respond, or I need to have some sort of tools. Or for me, my personal opinion is if I find myself in a situation where I'm being judged in a way that is unfair, then, you know, I remove myself from that situation completely without any remorse.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great choice at times, you know, change terrain, get yourself out of it, you know, and know what works for you and what doesn't. And I just want to say this one thing about this receiving, because that fits in nicely here. True receiving is actually receiving other people's points of views, judgments, conclusions, expectations, projections, without the point of view, without taking it on, without entangling with it, with intensified life force or not, you know, and just looking at it as a point of view, because that's what it is.
Just an observation, isn't it?
An observation.
Observance.
Exactly.
Of what that is, without any charge or polarity, as you're saying. Yeah.
And that requires a level of self-mastery, if you wish, where you have actually looked at the wounding of your being up to this point in time. Because when you get to that stage of disentanglement and we're starting to feel coherent with yourself, then other people's judgments, attacks, even if you wish, especially in this reality, become okay.
They mean nothing.
They mean nothing.
Yeah.
They mean nothing, because, you know, that's the part that's how you know that you are progressing, because other people's opinions, you know, they don't hurt me. There's no emotional reaction from me when somebody judges me. I have no emotional reaction at all. It's almost quite calm, and then I just go into, right, what's the right thing to do here in this situation? You know, what's the wisest thing for me to do in this situation? It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing, because it was always, well, I was the most judgmental when I cared about what other people thought about me.
Yeah.
You know? And once I didn't give a shit what anybody thinks about me, then I was cool with everything.
Yeah. And if it does hurt, then there's an area there that needs to be looked at and worked on and healed. If there's something there that is really getting you, that is a trigger for something, that is an area that we need to look at, isn't it?
There's a wound, to look at.
And
that means by no way, that you cannot say this doesn't work for me, or, you know, thank you for the conversation, I have to go, you know, and things like that. You don't become the doormat.
Yes.
The victim. Yeah.
In allowance, because lots of people think, oh my God, you know, now you're this, and no, it's not
good enough.
And this is where all of the three words that we've been talking about here come into unity, isn't it? You know, so you have judgment, and you have awareness of the judgment, and then you have acceptance. You know, you know, you're done. You're good.
Absolutely, you're
and
done.
Guys, if I may chime in here, remember the most important part in all this. With awareness, right, comes responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
When somebody says to me, blah, 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 you receive it. Fine, allow it, whatever. But with that awareness comes responsibility. When you allow it, okay, what happens is your frequency goes up higher. You healed. You are a master. I am a masterful facilitator. You can judge me all day long. Whatever, I don't care. Like Norman said, perfect. That's a perfect wording. But what I'm saying is that responsibility means you healed, or if you don't heal, you're not healed at that moment, you heal it, and that means When you heal within, you raise the frequency, and the people around you, the world around you, the nature, the animals, the creatures, the seen and the unseen, they either raises their frequency or they don't, but they change. That's true responsibility.
Yeah, you become the invitation.
Yes.
Does that bring anything up for anyone else before we move on to the next question, which I don't know what it is, but anyone who wants to say anything about that allowance and through receiving maybe, which goes nicely with the judgment. Any questions there?
No, I just say it is quite a tough journey. And as Andrea said, that's the responsibility that comes with the awareness that it is something, you know, one needs to let go of if it's wounding. And it's not always
the key here. That's where you got it. When you take 100% responsibility,
absolutely,
you're home free.
Yeah.
And that works the other direction as well. That does work in the other way as well. There are some times that we can not judge ourselves enough. You know, there are some times when we can allow ourselves to do and be things that are not in our greatest good. You know, and there's a complacency as well. There's always a middle line.
There's a thing called imposter syndrome, which you might have come across. So Billy Connolly, for instance, he always thought that someone's going to tap him on the shoulder, say, your time's up, Billy, you're back to being a welder in Glasgow. And I think that's time is sometimes imposter syndrome is your perceived judgment. You think you're being judged by other people, and I suppose you've got to take that out of your mind and get on with what you're doing.
Because it could be completely make-believe.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's explore that a bit more. Yeah, what is that?
You judging yourself.
Exactly.
I find that varies from day to day, depending on how strong I feel in myself. So sometimes, you know, it'd be like you say, oh, you know, think what you like, that's perfect, I don't care. But out of the blue, for some reason, something might take seed. And yes, there probably is something in me I need to look at, but my ability to do that in that instant on that day varies from day to day.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I think it depends a lot on how you're feeling and what's happening in your life. How well you can actually hold your center, you know, if you're experiencing being judged. Because if you can hold that center, you will be able to allow it. But then I suppose there's always the question, as you said earlier, Martina, of how much of it do I allow? Because sometimes it is about walking away, you know, and there's a time to walk away too, when it's too much or when it's enough or whatever.
So what are the tools that you guys are using when you get into that stage? How do you get out of the funk? What is your experience? How do you get yourself out of it when that happens? That imposter syndrome.
I use an inner dialogue. I like to, I love the way that modern phones, everybody's walking around talking out loud, because it means I don't look like a crazy person anymore. I'm always verbalizing things, and sometimes there's no difference between what's going up here and what comes out here sometimes. And you know, I like to, if I find myself in those moments, I like to out loud in my mind or out loud actually, you know, tell myself off, properly tell myself off. You don't know jack shit about that person. Who do you think you are saying these things? That person could be this, or they could be this, or they could be this. And then I answer myself back, yeah, you know, you're right. You know, and I like, that's one of the tools that I employ. Yeah, I mean, most things just come naturally. I find most things come intuitively, but when they're not and the programs start to run, I find it's really important for me to actually have a full-on conversation with myself.
Can I ask you, Matty, who is the one that is telling you off in those conversations that you're thinking a certain way?
Oh my God, it could be one of any of them. You know, that's why I said people who don't understand. I said there was a point where I became we, you know, and you know, it's crowded in here, man.
Is it? Let's call it a co-creation. You're being advised and guided rather than judged shitless by whoever blood entity is running it at the time.
So that brings up the question, is judgment a program? that's running us at times. From what Matty's saying, he switched, and we all do, and I do, you switch into this judgmental program, and then the authentic part of you is the bit that comes in and says, hold on a moment, what am I doing? Where's the awareness? Where's the responsibility? Where's the neutrality in this? Whether it's you judging somebody or somebody judging you, or you perceiving they're judging you. So is that a program?
Yes,
It's
but
a very
remember, Laura, in order to create or give birth to clarity, if you will, without conclusion, you have to observe contrast briefly. So if you briefly observe, okay, I judge this, okay, up to now, but from now on, okay, I'm not good. So you almost like, you have to observe contrast briefly in order to give birth to clarity in your mind,
Yeah,
within yourself, within your body.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
say, I worked with, I can't say who, but I worked with somebody this week. Is a well-known person. I did psychic surgery on her, and this person was judging herself with something particular. So I said to her, it's okay, but from now on, what are you going to do from now on? And then we devised a plan, we discussed something. So I said, rather you judging it, how about if you becoming the clarity, if you becoming or the process? She was like, wow, and she went into this total creation station, total, like, and she didn't realize that she was judging the judgment. I said,
Yes.
don't worry, you don't have to judge it. Don't judge it.
Yes.
Just, okay, you did this now. Never mind. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we're going to create something else. But also, she, that particular energy, if you will, was in her body. So I removed it from her. And from that point of view, from that point, she created something else. And this person is in the sports world. So what happened is that they were like, so I said, look, you see, I said, we stir the freaking raw vegan soup. If you don't like this, put something else in it.
It sounds like, Andrea, that she went from judgment to actually compassion, which I think is the opposite to judgment.
She went for clarity because she was judging her. She created this.
But to get to the clarity, she nearly needed to accept the judgment with compassion. And I think when we start doing that, it dissolves. It just dissolves it, because we're now approaching it with heart
She had other
energy.
things which I removed from her. But what I was explaining to her, that of course you judged yourself up to now, but what if you don't? What if you? So don't judge the judgment. So I said, okay. She was like, oh, okay. So, oh, yeah. I said, so what?
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
That brings us back to awareness, okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Having those like, oh my God, that's the awareness that we're looking for. So every time we go into judgment, let's lead ourselves back to awareness, which you so nicely illustrated what you did with your client. So thank you for that.
So I have a little curveball, Martina.
So
I have a little curveball. Is everyone familiar with the teacher Matt Kahn?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Matt gave some wonderful analogies about what he calls the spiritual checklist. And so this is all the different things that you feel you have to do in a day to be a spiritual person. You know, these silly little things that, some of it's right. There are some things you do have to do on a cyclical basis. It's true. But what can happen is those things, when they serve you, then all of a sudden they can flip in frequency because your programs use them as a form of control. And so we start to not do the things that are on our checklist. And then we feel bad. Well, I should have done this. 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 I haven't done this today. I haven't done that. And that for me has become a big issue. Because instead of now judging other people out there, now I've got my little spiritual journey and my little bubble that I live in that has to be upkept by all of these different practices and rituals. And if they slip and slide because I'm human, that becomes really destructive to me.
Okay.
That's that kind of judgment.
Okay, that's a very good point. This is where we were saying, there's positive judgment at the same time.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that?
Well, it's a mixture sometimes. Sometimes I have to just do the things that I'm procrastinating about. And other times, like right now, I just say, fuck it, I'm taking time off from all of it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll purposefully
That's
make sure I don't do my rituals before I go to bed.
good.
Yeah.
Good.
So what I'd just like to ask here is going right back to, where are we learning this judgment from? Where is this coming from that we're not born aware? Because we are born aware. So what's knocking it out of us? It's our parents, it's the media,
The system, the schools. Yeah.
How sympathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the vagus. Yeah.
Well, let's say a little bit about the programming here, because, you know, it is. We have already made Andrea's story. We've already made the connection that the physical is impacted by the programming, and the programming is a judgment most of the time. So let's just talk about the programming, the judgment as programming, and not leave the rest for now. And then Laura just brought up the vagus nerve. So how does that link together? Do you want to say something on that?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
On the vagus nerve?
The vagus nerve and the programming of it.
Well, I think, I can't. I've gone.
We can hear you.
Do you want me to say something? Or?
Yeah, you say something.
Just your camera, Laura.
Okay, let me sort this out.
So I'll kick it off with something, and then you chime in, guys. It's basically, we're looking at the vagus nerve as in a bit more detail with regards to the programs, the judgment we're running. And it's one of those nerves, if you wish, is one of those connections in our bodies that is hugely connecting to the unseen world and to judgment and to everything else. In fact, it is when every negative thought, what your belief system considers negative, throws your vagus nerve out of balance. Okay? And that is very interesting when I first heard that. And it's a very simple thing. You can actually do an exercise where you take your, it's a very simple exercise, and there is a meditation that I've written that we can use on our website. You can use that, but very simple. You just interlink your hands, bring it in the back on the occiput, close your eyes or keep them open. The head stays completely still. And you just take the eyes over to one side up to 60 seconds, bring them back, and then to the opposite side, 60 seconds, okay? And that balances and dissipates the negative programming very quickly. I'm not saying it's completely taking it out, but it immediately changes the state. So Matty, try that, okay?
Yes, that's an interesting tool.
Yeah. Use the body. And it's, you know, if you do it regularly in the mornings, in the evenings before you go to bed, couple of breaths, you know, it takes not 2 seconds, but let's say 2 minutes if you want to, you know, each side. And that helps, you know, to release that stuff from the physical, because the vagus nerve starts from the back here, goes all the way down. So it really has an impact on the organs and on just everything. And it is the mystical. It's the connection to the mystical, to the unseen.
It is.
The topic we will be discussing in another Zoom. But I just want to mention that as a little tool, if you do go into judgment of yourself or overstimulated awareness, you just grab the occiput in the back, do that, and it brings you back.
Beautiful.
And now,
Lovely.
about that probably, unless anyone else wants to bring something up.
Well, I'd like to talk.
Sorry, I'm going to have to disappear. I've got a 6 o'clock meeting, so.
Okay,
take care, Norman.
Norm, and we
See you
put the
again.
recording on the, and thanks for your contributions today. Thank you.
Cheers.
Don't eat screens.
You know, it's interesting. This is the part that most people really don't understand, and if they did, it would change their awareness of themselves completely. Is the idea of the central nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, and all of the pieces and parts that connect to it. Because, you know, the sympathetic is the ego, the parasympathetic is the shadow, and you can actually see when the two of them work together. You know,
Yeah.
and from my own experience, I find that the monkey mind, that part that would get you into the state that, you know, that you were just describing, that this process to get you out of, for me, that's the sympathetic, as far as I can see, that gets you into that state.
It's a sympathetic
But the
program.
parasympathetic seems to be able to empower it or bring it up at really difficult times. And so that one battle between when you realize that your own central nervous system is trying to take control of you, then that, for me, it tends to be the basis of most of these problems. That's where a lot of this arises from.
Yeah.
That's why sovereignty is so important, isn't it? Self-governance and being in your body and in your heart.
Absolutely. Piece by piece, bit by bit, regaining your sovereignty in whichever way you can.
Yeah. And it is an ongoing process, okay? As long as we are playing in the, on this planet, in this reality, duality / judgment, if you wish, awareness is obviously, that's what we're here for. So it is that finding that balance between, you know, overexcitement and depression, if you wish, finding that level where everything is possible, everything is included, nothing is judged, because that's when we tap into those infinite possibilities. Reminding yourself that every time you do judge and you add that emotional hump to it, you are taking yourself out of infinite possibility.
Absolutely, Martina. And Martina, have you ever had your own shadow speak to you?
All the time.
You know, my parasympathetic has only ever said one thing to me.
Oh, really?
And this was a time when I caught it in a program and I didn't have judgment. I just allowed it, you know, and it stopped instantly. And the only thing it said to me was, "I hate you." That's what it said. Yeah. I was so surprised.
Yeah, yeah.
And that kind of shows the levels that we're up against here.
Yeah.
Well, you called it out, didn't you?
Yes. I didn't go to judgment. I didn't try to be aggressive. I just simply saw it for what it was and it stopped.
You stepped into a... And as Ray was saying, as soon as you're aware of this, it stops so many of the programs anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bish bosh, bish bosh, bish bosh. So it's like tennis.
You can always ask it when you have someone talking to you like that, usually nasty, ask for the name, because if they can't give you a name.
Now this wasn't that. I'm quite clairsentient actually. I've been doing it for a few years and I have a lot of off-world communication. This was my actual shadow, my own parasympathetic. That was a part of myself. It was so surprised. That was why I was so surprised about it. It never actually spoke before. It's tried to pretend to be guides, guardians, tried to pretend to be other people. It does like sometimes to pretend to be people I'm trying to talk to, just to put me off of my game.
Yeah.
How crazy is that your own body is fighting against you?
Oh yeah, the body sometimes identifies so much that it thinks it is the soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bastard, who the fuck do you think you are? You're my body and I love you for who you are and the DNA technology and the instrument of experience, but you're not the soul. You know, it's good. But let's say one more thing for the validation of other people's realities. When we take on the judgment of others and we start judging ourselves, we're actually validating their reality. And that can be quite funky, because it's then when you start creating, what's that called? I had written that down somewhere. Two universes fighting each other, because your authentic truth starts fighting the other authentic truth. And fighting with yourself because you have actually validated someone else's reality instead of validating yours.
That's right. You cannot fight someone. You cannot fight someone who doesn't want to fight. It's an attack. You know, most people are not willing to attack someone, but they're well up for a fight, you know?
Yeah. So it's that conflicting universes, which is quite interesting to look at. And that brings a completely different level of entanglement. because you're not necessarily just entangling with that person that you see right there, but you're entangling with the entire entourage.
Yeah,
the whole unseen world.
Soul families and with all the stuff
Yes.
hanging around those guys.
Yes.
All the conflicting universes that you have got yourself involved in, just acknowledge them now. You don't need to know when and where and what, and just let them go. Take them out of your system. Dissipate, release, and let them go.
And trust your own vision of yourself. I'm not using the word judgment deliberately. Trust your own, how you like to see yourself, not how that other person is seeing you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed, I think, Martina, what you meant is align and agreeing with the other person, right?
Align and agree, defend. You know, but this is, we had it in the judgment, in the book. Salom said something. I think Laura said it in the beginning. It's that right and wrong. Okay? It's that right and wrong. So what we do is we create a scenario where what is right and what is wrong. And then we start defending that point of view that you're right, which then completely takes you out of what else is possible. You know, you judge then the wrongness when you don't agree yourself anymore with that particular right and wrong. It's a bloody mind.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. It's right and wrong business. There is no such thing. What if there is no right or wrong?
Yeah.
There is.
Yes.
Everything is just a point of view.
Yes.
And we can choose whatever works for us in that moment of time. Doesn't mean if it doesn't work for me today, maybe it works for me tomorrow.
Yes.
Just out.
Open space.
And
Jill.
remember, all the data is stored in our subconscious. And subconscious is our inner child. And the person I was trained, one of the persons I was trained with, Dr. Shulen, says the best business partnership you can have is with your inner child, is with your subconscious, because that's the one who's going to let go of all your crap, all your data, all your judgments, all your everything. And he used to say, like, one day if I wake up, one day and don't judge, I'm going to buy myself a huge Sunday. And he says that day never came, because you say, oh, that's nice, the judgment. Or that, you know, you can say, like you said at the beginning. So it's like, okay, so also it's a good question to ask. Is this going to create more in my life, or is this a contribution to my life? And I've decided for myself, it's not. So I just,
That's a very good question. It's a nice tool. What is that going to create? You know, what is that going to create? And you can take that further for people who, you know, like for me, if I say, what is that going to create this week? Or what is this going to create in 20 years or in 200 years? And go with the energy of that, because we need to look, you know, the level of exploration we're doing, we need to look at non-linearity, we need to look at multidimensionality and all of that. So it's always good to go into the big picture and see what that creates, because that sometimes could justify you choosing something right now, which makes absolutely no sense to you or to anyone else. But you ask the question, what's that going to create? Is that going to create more in 200 years? And you're getting like, yes, then do it. Trust that. Heart's discernment, as Laura said earlier on, trust heart's discernment. It makes not any sense. The choice.
Absolutely, that's what I'm talking about. It was created.
I know, yeah.
I mean, even the judgment. When I was little, did I feel good if I was judged? No. So don't judge, you wouldn't be judged. Don't condemn, you wouldn't be condemned. Forgive and you be forgiven. So it's very, very simple. You know, it's not no secrets about it. It's very simple. It's just like we said earlier, Laura mentioned, we're programmed like this. We're programmed, you know. So what we do now is we reset our blueprint, our blood and bone marrow, and working on ourselves continuously and going now to a higher frequency. And the higher frequency we go, we train people how to treat us. If this is what you want to be, fine, whatever. That's your choice. I don't care, whatever. You know, so it's like you let the people be whatever they want to be.
True receiving. True receiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it true for me?
I had a very interesting conversation with my daughter today. And that might fit into this. We were talking about receiving, and she was invited to a very nice picnic or something, and she said she had some anxiety, and she said, what is that? And long story short, we got to the bottom of it, that for her to really truly receive the nice stuff, it's not even a judgment from other people, puts her in a place of obligation. That created the anxiety for her. So look at that for yourself. Do you feel that if you just receive without a point of view, and let's think of it from a good place, from a positive, receiving positive stuff, and it's almost, does it feel light for you, or is there like a little hook where you think, oh, now I have to do something which I might not want?
Absolutely, obligation. You know, I grew up with this. My mother, she was terrible for this. My mother used to, she worked in places, and she very much kept herself to herself, and her work colleagues would invite her out to drink. She doesn't drink at all, never did, never would. And she would go and she would be putting her makeup on, getting ready, going, oh God, I don't want to do this. You know, I said, well, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. That's
Yeah.
You know, this is it. But it was the reactionary, you know, the feeling she had of having to say, sorry guys, I don't want to come. You know, she would go to all that energy to go there, rather than that small bit of energy that it took to say, no, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, because of that feeling, that trepidation.
Yeah.
She didn't want to be judged.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wanted to belong.
How much judgment is running underneath that? I don't belong, I'm not good enough. I need in order to get, you know, I mean, we were all brought up with this. We all grew up with that, you know, and there's no judgment towards our parents, because they didn't know any better either. You know, probably worse than we had. So that's all. Judgment is such a big topic, isn't it?
It is huge.
And remember, guys, every judgment, if you judge yourself, it's abuse. Abusing
It's
yourself.
abuse, yes. Well, yes.
100%. You're
Well,
hurting
because
yourself.
from an infinite perspective, would an infinite being judge themselves?
No, but what I'm saying is, if you judge yourself, if you are in that, whatever, somebody judges themselves, they are abusing themselves.
Yeah, I'm taking your point and taking it further to ask the question. As an infinite being, you wouldn't judge yourself.
But surely this puts us into the terms of moral code as well, because sometimes, you know, sometimes I have to give myself a good hard kick up the arse, you know.
Yes, and also, you know, judgment, because I've been studying something. Judgment is also like a chemical abuse. It's a toxic. You're putting toxins into your body, and then what you're doing is, oh, I'm fat. Okay, I'm gonna eat some more chips, right? You know what I mean? It's like what you're doing is, and then you justify your judgment, and then you go, oh, I have thyroid issues, but I'm going to eat more this. But I'm not going to change anything, but I'm going to, like, you see what I'm saying? And
delusional.
And you justify, and then you justify it. So it's like almost a chemical imbalance in your body.
Yeah. Well, because every thought, every emotion is electromagnetic in itself, which then creates, it's the thought, the emotion that creates the chemical that then creates the imbalance in the body.
Exactly. And here, Martina, here's one for you ladies, because I'm sure all of you have done it. One of the most destructive things that I used to watch, because I come from a huge family of women. I'm a rare male in massive. I've got 4 daughters, 3 sisters, 7 aunties. It's huge. And I've observed these women over and over many years. And one of the most destructive things I thought that I've ever seen them do is when they wake up in the morning, look at themselves in the mirror and go, oh. Before they put their makeup on, and then it's okay, you know.
Yeah,
that's a judgment. That's a harmful judgment. That's a harmful judgment.
Yeah,
it is.
Okay.
And where does that come from?
That's abuse.
Yes, social conditioning.
And it's all the beliefs
I had
again.
a client, and she said she believed she was ugly, and then anyway we worked on her, and then she said that because her mother used to tell her, oh, her nose is not right, or this and this, and then she took it up on herself again, programming, and then she believed she's ugly. She abused herself for I don't know 30 years or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. But that's, you know, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get rid of the mirrors.
I would like
Get all the mirrors out. Get them covered up.
Is there anything more we want to say about that? Because I would like to take it into a slightly different arena now.
Go on.
Any questions on what we just said or did, or?
No.
Okay. What I would like to do is look at it, the judgment from a definition perspective now, to conclude something. And why don't we just briefly take the current situation of the corona, you know, lockdown, virus situation, pandemic, and economy destruction and all of that, and look at the judgment of that. How many judgments? I've written a few things down. How many judgments, conclusions, points of views do we have about the situation? And then I would like to look at the opposite of what is actually possible if we wouldn't judge it for that. So throw in a couple of things that you hear all the time on the news that annoy you.
There'll be a second wave.
Say again?
There'll be a second wave.
There'll be
A second wave of the virus. Yeah.
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 And a third, possibly a fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to chime in, Martine. I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of speaking, guys, but I'm in a good mood today.
Are you judging yourself?
No, yeah.
I know what
And
that's
you're down here.
like.
This coronavirus has been incredible for me. Absolutely amazing, because it's very easy to sit in your little Omni Krishna bloody bubble, right? And just be higher than thou. It really, really is easy to do that. And when this first started to kick in, I almost lost complete faith in humanity. I'll be honest with you. It was the amounts of different people who have different opinions and viewpoints of what's going on, and how you could absolutely put something in front of someone, say, look at this, and they would go, no, you know, even if it was right there in front of them, no, that's not the way it is. And so, you know, it just felt so, after a while, it just felt so wrong for me, because I was looking at people, you know, in a shop, everybody's wearing masks and gloves. You know, there's all these different ways that you can walk, and only so many people at a time. And then someone will wander in with a baby and 3 kids in a pushchair, and just, you know, like it's not even happening. And I had such a tough time with this. But eventually, over the days and over the weeks, it just felt horrible to hold that inside me. I just couldn't maintain it anymore. And so I started to just slowly see that everybody has their own opinion, their own filters, their own perception of what's going on. And I was able to relate that to other areas of my life. And so I've actually found the coronavirus has schooled me and tooled me in being a lot less judgmental. Because it's horrible not to socialize with people. It's horrible not to have friendships. It's horrible.
Let me stop you there without being rude, okay? Because I want to write this down, okay? So that we get a nice little list going here. So I think we can all agree upon, without judgment, staying in our awareness, that the virus, COVID, is a perfect playing field for judgments.
Yeah.
You just said, so number one, how do I, give me one word. Give me the judgment first, Matti, and then give me the opposite, what you've learned, basically, in not more than 3 words. Otherwise, you know, we're getting too long into story.
Sure.
So judgment of what? Of social interaction? Or
Ignorance.
ignorance, that's the judgment. Good. And what is the opposite? What's the gift in that judgment of ignorance that you've applied towards others? What gift came out?
Kindness.
Kindness. Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't want to be rude. I just want to stop.
No, not at all.
I want to have an opportunity, because it would be nice to go a bit more into that on a different level then. So ignorance, kindness. Cool. What else? What other judgments does anyone have about the COVID situation, and what would be the opposite, the gift in that judgment?
Yeah, I have one, Martina.
Yes.
I observe people breaking the rules too, and I had a judgment in relation to their defiance.
Defiance, yes.
Yes. And the opposite of that, and I did go the full circle on it, just like Matty did, is allowing.
Allowing. So let me ask you something there, because that's quite interesting. So the defiance, you're defying people that are breaking rules. So what is it with you and rules where you're sticking to them without really wanting to?
It was I was judging them for breaking the rules, and I was judging them thinking they are so defiant, they know the situation, look what they're doing, they're endangering everybody, blah 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 blah. And then after a while I actually thought, well, that's okay, so they can do that. Maybe they're right, actually. Maybe this is all a bit of a scam. Maybe that we shouldn't be all on lockdown, and maybe we should all just get the virus, and should we probably be okay anyway. So I did a complete full circle.
Allowance.
Yeah.
Defiance, breaking rules, allowance. Would you also say that that has allowed you, that learning through that judgment round into allowance, that you would allow yourself to break the rules a bit more?
Yes, and I have.
Woo!
Yeah, me too.
So you're also at being more allowing towards yourself.
Towards myself, yes, because I just changed in the way I was thinking about it over the whole period of
Fabulous.
observing.
Fabulous. Thank you, Mary. What else we got?
Okay.
What about oversensitive and overreacting?
That's the judgment.
Yeah.
Self or others?
Of others.
Of others, they are overreacting.
I passed somebody less than 2 meters as I passed, and they were screaming at me.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's the same as being an allowance.
Being an allowance.
Seeing it from their point of view, and they've obviously got big issue that why they're being so sensitive. So yeah, allowance and understanding.
Has it also helped you to allow yourself to be a bit more oversensitive at times and not having to be the cool beans all the time?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Jill.
There are some grumpy bastards that are really enjoying this, aren't there? I have to say. There are. I've noticed lots of the people that like to tell people what to do are really loving this situation.
Yes, I agree, Matty. I think so.
Is that judgment?
Yes. So awareness of judgment. Awareness of judgment.
Absolutely.
And when I started looking at that through Access, I applied it all the time. And whenever Paul or Emma is like, it's awareness of judgment, piss off. Well, I think that's...
Yeah, I know. It's
a fucking judgment. Take it and run with it.
I get annoyed with people about, because I'm not political particularly at all, and I don't particularly dislike or like Boris Johnson, but I get really annoyed at people going on and on about how he's hiding away and he's not doing his job and he's making a bad job of it. And I just think, my God, how could nobody knows what's going on, how can anybody judge him for that, I suppose.
He's banging trouble, and he knows it. From both sides.
What do we call that?
Well, I suppose I'm judging the people that are judging him. Sort of I'm making a judgment about the people that are judging him. But I don't know, I suppose, and I think it's all fear bred, and I think the thing that comes out of it for me is the word that sorry, I can't really see the name, but the other lady said about compassion. I think that's what comes out of it for me, is compassion, both for the people that are judging because they want to be looked after and nobody really knows the answer, and I think a lot of their judgment is fear based, and then I'm judging them because and I think it's learning compassion for both sides.
Lynn, let me ask you a question on this one. Do you think that Boris Johnson, when he chose to become a politician, do you think he's capable of taking judgment, or does he need somebody else to defend him?
I think, well, I would hope that if he became a politician, he felt capable of taking judgment. That's my hope. I don't know.
I would almost go so far to say he must enjoy it. Otherwise, he would not have got himself into a place of becoming a politician, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but who expected to get a pandemic or whatever?
Yes, he has very little sovereignty. You know, these people, they're groomed into these positions. They have very little sovereignty, and I can bet you that Boris Johnson is terrified of the public and of the silent government that stand behind him, telling him what to do. He knows that everything that he's doing is going to cause trouble. But there's nothing he can do because he'll be murdered by one or the other.
Yeah.
So Lynn, what's the opposite? What did you make of? What did you learn through your judgment of the judgment of others?
Compassion, really. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Next one. Who's got something
That leaves me. For me, Martina, it's my time to shine. You know that. This is my time to shine. I mean, I am on my game, on the top and beyond. One thing I can tell is sovereignty. Okay.
apply to the COVID thing, yeah?
Yeah, with the COVID thing, it's sovereignty. So when you stay in your freedom, okay? So remember, these people only act upon the global narrative. So whatever they believe the global narrative is, because if you believe that, you lost already sovereignty, you lost your freedom. So I practice that daily. I am present moment. And there are people around me who obviously don't, because they act upon other beliefs or judgments or fears or whatever it is. So if they, like we had an incident, so we go at dawn to the park and we were coming out and there was this guy coming with full force. And I said to him, can you please stop? Just respect the space, because there were other people there. And he didn't want to. And I didn't hear it because I had my marks in my head, but he was saying blah, blah, blah. But I just let him be the one to be. The meaning, if I stay in my freedom, and if he wants to be an asshole, or if he wants to scream and shout and whatever, that's his choice. And therefore, do whatever you want to be. And I'm like that with everybody. I ask them, so can you please respect my space? And if they don't,
okay.
Then
So what I'm getting,
don't read the wrong bitch.
with regards to COVID, you are judging people who do not.
No, I don't. That's not what I say. That I stand in my.
No, hold on. We're doing an exercise here.
Yeah.
So social distance boundaries, and people who do not apply them the way they should, that's a judgment of yours.
I ask them, can you please respect my space?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
if they don't, I don't necessarily judge them, but.
Yeah. So what's?
So I ask.
What is the opposite? What is the opposite
of what? Sorry.
What's the opposite? Just like what we've done with everyone else. What's the opposite of that?
I want to give you like a really good examples of for others as well. So let's say freedom, and the opposite of that could be entanglement or.
Is it something like speaking up for yourself?
Control. That's a good one, because control and freedom, right? That's kind of.
Right.
Because if somebody, like, no, it's not even control, it's like, maybe in their mind could be control, because if I ask them, can you please respect my space, in their mind that could be control. Don't control me.
Okay, cool.
For example, I'm just saying as an example. So.
Yeah, cool. So what I was going to look at was, I was looking at about the tech censorship, where Facebook is taking down certain people's posts, which they call so nicely content moderation, And I looked at that, and I looked at the judgment of that, and I thought, well, you know what? From an awareness perspective, they have a lot of very interesting, good points of views along those lines. And then I looked at what could that judgment that this COVID has brought up with this content moderation, actually, what does that create? And what, for me, when I looked at that, I thought, well, that is actually creating that people starting to look at the freedom of speech far beyond what's going on through the COVID crisis now. Yeah. Because now what's actually happening is people starting to realize that, you know, that's been happening before.
Yes.
Freedom of speech actually mean to us.
Yes.
I, from the very beginning, as we all have done, you know, looked at the virus to facilitate the big rise of consciousness.
Yeah.
So what if we could now, from now on, and as long as this goes on, look at all the different things and say, well, how can we turn this around? What is that actually facilitating for the greater good?
Yeah.
For me, that censorship is one. The other thing that always comes up is the lockdown, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, and being violated, our freedom being violated.
Yes.
By that. So how can we turn that round?
Yeah.
I remember in the beginning, Martina, when we were locked down in the beginning, and some people found it really, really difficult in the beginning. Maybe not so much now. Well, it depends. Some people are finding it difficult because it's gone on for so long. But it reminded me of a book I read when I was doing psychotherapy once, and the title was something like this. Now, this isn't exactly it, but it was something like this. It said, I will tell you how the caged bird can sing. And it's something I never forgot, because I read the book, and it was about that. It was about somebody being imprisoned and about how they were able to maintain their freedom because they had freedom in their thoughts. And even though there were four walls around them, they still felt free, and they started to push the boundary out to see what they could do at this time that was imposed upon them. How could they use it for their freedom to choose what they could create? And I think that that's something that's going to come out of this lockdown.
Oh yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
Lovely energy.
Yeah. And who enjoyed lockdown because they turned to being creative. I mean, I know Lynn has done a lot creatively. Lynn's the lady who made my mermaid, Martina.
I was just thinking.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done.
So there's a beautiful example of creativity within lockdown. So it's how something is perceived, not what is actually happening, isn't it?
But it's quite a learning experience for me as well, though, Laura, because I found that I don't know how to just sit and be. I find it really hard just to be. I've always got to do.
Yeah.
Everything about this virus is illuminating. Everything about it. It's, you know, when you look at the things that they try to suppress on YouTube, you know, a lot of it just validated the people that were believing in it. You know, they took it down from YouTube, therefore, oh, it must be real. And a lot of it was complete bullshit, you know? Yeah. Most of it, 99.9% in my judgment, was complete bullshit, you know? But it seems like nothing that they can do at the moment is right, because I think it was predicted that that people wouldn't be able to handle a quarantine. But I think the opposite is true. People actually are now starting to enjoy the quarantine. They're starting to enjoy not having to go to work. They're seeing a different way. You know, people working from home when they used to have to go and do the 9-to-5 grind, the children at home, you know, and I think it's just from all directions, it's just breaking down this structure that we've been thrown into, you know?
Yes, I
agree. I think a lot of things have changed, but also there is still a very large amount of people who are expecting to return to normal.
Yes, Andrea. Yes,
I know a lot of people. I have a lot of connections, and they still expecting to return to normal because they believe the propaganda, they believe the global narrative, they believe the fear of the money, the fear of this, fear of that, rather than they sit down and make mermaids or fairies.
That's right.
Right?
Most people can't even perceive. Most people can't even perceive that there could be anything other than what they call the normal.
Exactly.
Which is what is the individual awakening. And there are some people who, let's say, within here, we are talking that we are aware, you know, there's a lot of things happening in the unseen. There's a lot of things happening in the seen, as you know, there are websites that you can check, the Zero Hedge and other websites, that there are things happening, but we're not necessarily hearing about it, or not necessarily seeing it. Like, I'm going to give you an example. When we go at dawn to the park, sometimes there are many photographers. What they do is they just want to, they set their camera, that's the shot I want. So I go there and I take pictures, and they're looking at me like, what is she taking pictures of? And I always take pictures of the bigger picture. The bigger picture, and then I don't want to post it out, and there are things there, but like what I'm saying is that it's not this, it's this.
Yes.
You know? And there are many, many millions of people in the world who cannot accept that the world has changed already, but it will be even a bigger change. And there'll be a lot of people who get frustrated, who get angry, and, you know, like Andrew was saying in the other.
I just can't wait for it to happen. I just want it to happen now, Andrea. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
come on!
Come on. Let's
we're going to a different galaxy, remember?
Let's have it, man. Let's have the writing, the mass death. Let's have all of this crazy shit. People going, you know, let's have it. Let's have it. I just need something. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I look out the window and nothing has changed.
This is our topic of non-judgment and...
Oh man, you know, I've waited millions of years for this.
Martina.
Okay, calm down. Let's get back to awareness. Bigger picture is great, and you know, we all love it and all that, and sometimes we need to go back and actually look at the nitty-gritty, and that's why to bring it back into our awareness, you know, and come back to this level of balance here. And again, I just want to go back to looking at a few more of those, and whatever you guys bring up too, because the confinement, the lockdown as well, what I've written down is what has that brought out, which we have known before, but it's really in your face now, is the domestic violence.
Yeah.
Domestic, yeah, absolutely.
Again, that's another positive. And as we are looking at all of these things, we're taking the judgments, and there's much more, you know, the big scene, the climate change, blah, blah, social economic here, all of that. As we are actually starting to take them and take our awareness detailed onto this and then swap it round, we can start using these subjects to work with them, to bring them to other people's attentions, to actually hone in and help those people if they so wish, you know, and things like that. So judgment is neither good, it's nor bad. It's just an interesting point of view. It's an amazing tool that we can use to actually create with.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because also what's highlighted is how many people have got so many addictions. There was a 3-hour queue for McDonald's.
Yeah.
Judgment in that from me.
Is anybody else battling with their addictions more than usual? No?
Drinking more, is that what you think?
Yeah, people drank more.
Eating more. Yeah. Eating
more.
Everything more except for the things I'm supposed to be doing.
Incessantly doing, it does bring things out.
Judgment. Who says you're supposed to be doing than that?
Okay, well, exactly. Yeah. I certainly know I'm not supposed to be sitting on my house smoking weed 24 hours a day, that's for sure.
Okay, so I think we need to put Matty on the stage here. Give us a definition of judgment after our discussion. What is your definition of judgment after what we've been talking about?
Well, it's be quite disappointing, really. Actually, my definition of judgment is literally coming to a conclusion based upon previous conceptions.
Yeah.
It's quite rubbish, I know.
No, it's actually
No,
quite
no.
good.
So
Yeah.
what is, I'm not done.
I see it as a very clinical process. I think that we can have judgment of judgment. People think, oh, a judgment is a negative thing, you know, but I think the word itself just means to make a decision, really.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And
And
then
if you didn't receive it as a judgment, but just a point of view, I think it wouldn't have the charge that comes with it when we receive it as a judgment.
Absolutely, Mary, 100%. Charge and polarity. That's what makes, that's the difference between a judgment and a choice, you know,
Yes.
the charge and polarity behind it.
And then it all depends on how you're feeling on any particular day or any particular moment, because that determines how you're going to receive it or hear it.
Well, I think that's where Martina's mantra that I've heard her say a few times, I love it. That's an interesting point of view.
Yes.
yeah, it's
Just to think that, if you just think that within yourself, that's how we cope with so many judgments and so many points of view thrown at
That
me.
masterful statement, that masterful statement takes all charge and polarity away.
It does.
It just melts the whole thing, and it's like,
yeah.
And it could be something, Martina, we could practice, you know, for ourselves. If it's not something that I would normally say, you say it a lot, and it is lovely, but I could practice saying it until I can do it without having to practice anymore.
yes.
So I learned that tool, interesting point of view. That's the tool in Access Consciousness, and they're actually advising. They say to you, you know what? If you really want to change your life, use that interesting point of view tool for every single thought having on a day towards others and towards yourself. So saying, okay, I need a coffee now. Okay, that's an interesting point of view, that I have this point of view that I need a coffee. You say it 2-3 times and you probably don't want a coffee anymore. It really takes the energy and just scatters it.
Yes.
Go down and use the whole shebang here. Interesting point of view that I have this point of view that, because then it turns into this mantra. And you know, Matty, when you know this inner dialogue starts, interesting point of view that I have this point of view, interesting point of view that I have this point of view, and it will dissipate like that.
Oh, I can feel it already. I can feel it. I can feel it already.
It's a very pragmatic tool, and very, you just said it, you got to use practice.
Yeah.
And it's gonna change a lot, you know.
Yes.
You practice that. There was something else I was gonna say. What else have you guys got until I remember what I was gonna say?
For me, Martina, it's just a choice in terms of, like I said earlier, I mean, is this good for me? No. So I don't choose it. Simple.
Yes, and
no. I mean, because
you're
not free then. I mean, it's like remember, you remember this. Remember I made soup and we tasted it with Martina. It was awful. I don't know what I put in it, but we didn't like it. And I'm thinking, I cannot believe I didn't make this bloody soup. So next day I made another soup, and anyway I took it to her. But like, did we eat it? No, because we made a choice. No, it's shit. We're not gonna eat it because it was we don't know what. But anyway, and when you taste the soup, how long you tolerate it in your mouth? A nanosecond. When you listen to something is not good, how long you tolerate it? Same. When you and how long you tolerate it? Second. But then if judgment is not good or whatever we're talking about, then why you tolerate it? Why are you doing it?
Well, you see, this is the thing, and yes, thanks for pointing that out. I mean, choice, yes, choice is the key to everything. And in order to get to the place where you can freely choose, you have to get rid of your programming that we've accumulated over lifetimes. And that's where the interesting point of view comes in, to let go of the programming so that you actually do have the freedom to choose whatever works for you.
I mean, I don't need that, but what I'm saying is just.
Yeah, I know you don't.
I mean,
You're the master, but other people might still need it, and that's why I wanted to throw it out. You know,
Yes.
it is a good tool, and I use it all the time, to be honest.
Yeah.
It really helps me to maneuver throughout the day and keeping myself sane at times. You know, so everything is just an interesting point of view. Absolutely.
Mm.
I'm not saying, Martin. Don't even try it.
What?
You are not sane. Don't even try to go there. You are crazy.
Okay, interesting point of view that she's got the point of view that I'm crazy.
Okay.
I truly receive your judgment with that. So that was a
Okay,
little.
that you are sane. That ship sailed a long time ago.
Yeah, Andrea, I hear what you're saying. And there was a time where those tools were really useful to you.
Yes.
You to arrive at the place of choice now. Okay, so this is again, you know, staying in awareness. Use what works. If you don't need it, don't use it. If you do need it, use it. You might not need it today. You might use it tomorrow. That type of stuff. The thing is, as soon as you go into judgment, this ship has sailed, never going to need it again. You might need it.
I was just joking. It's not a bad.
Yeah, but it's nice because it was a little role play here that really showed what the point that we were actually making here. Yeah.
There's also sometimes we have conflict between our judgment and our intuition. Sometimes they can come from two different points of view, you know. So this is another conflict that I find sometimes. Are you truly intuiting something, or are you making a judgment of it?
So what if, darling, you could from now on just use your awareness, forget all the other stuff, forget judgment,
Absolutely,
intuition,
absolutely,
and just use awareness.
But these are ongoing things. Nobody's perfect quite yet, and I just find it interesting sometimes. Judgment. It's one of those things where sometimes I find I'm being intuitive, and therefore I think I'm being judgmental. But then I work out, oh shit, that's why I was feeling like that, because obviously this is the reason why. And there are other times when that's in reverse.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Matty. I feel like that sometimes. And sometimes when I'm being intuitive and I'm feeling something quite strongly, I actually don't say it because I know if I do, it could be received as a judgment. And so I actually keep it to myself sometimes. And I wait for more to happen, maybe for it to emerge more. And then I might be able to say, well, I actually did have those feelings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes, there are some times where you walk into a situation and you just know, know. And it's okay to know, I'm sorry, but this person is a wrong one and I cannot be here right now. There's that happens. It happens.
Yeah. But isn't that the positive side of judgment? Is there to keep us safe? That's why we've got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is there a difference between discernment and judgment? Because I like to try and think on those two terms. So discernment being more of my own considered, perspective on something, and then the judgment being the separation and, I don't know, some kind of self-righteousness about it.
One is a thought process. One is a thought process, and the other one is unseen. If that makes sense.
I like, from an energetic perspective, when I look at the energy of discernment and the energy of awareness, is quite similar for me.
Yeah, it is.
Because awareness leads me back into my heart, and when I say discernment, that I always connect that with my heart's knowingness.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that is for others. For me, you're asking the question, for me, that's on a similar sort of wavelength.
Yeah, there's an allowance in it, isn't there, in discernment? It's not finite and closed, there's something fluid about it.
Discernment is a skill that you have to learn and develop, whereas a judgment is something that is reactionary.
Yeah.
Who said that now? I think, Mary, you just said something really good. The judgment, you will perceive the limitation around it. If you call discernment and there's a perception of limitation, it's still a judgment. But if you can discern or judge or be aware, and it's keeps you in the state of expansiveness,
Yes.
it's okay.
Yeah.
Cutting, you know,
Yeah.
out other people's truths. You are not, you know, cutting out your own infinite possibilities when you stay in that expanded place. And that's maybe an exercise to, on a completely, well, not different, but related. What does an expanded space even feel like compared to a contracted space?
May I chime in here, Martina? There really is, it's for me, I mean, it's a tool that I'm going to use until as long as I live, and I highly recommend it to anyone. It's not a secret. It's very, very simple. Yeah. Ask, and ask. I asked, and I am given. I am asking, because when you're truly asking for something that you are truly willing to receive,
Yeah.
it will get given. And I ask every day. A lot of things happened. I think Laura saw one of the things I sent her, what I received. Was it yesterday? The day, you know, the thing, Laura, I sent you, the feather.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I ask for a lot of stuff, and it just appears. It just appears like out of nowhere. It's right in front of me. I don't know how I got it there. I don't care. I'm not questioning it. Ask.
Yeah, so that's a perfect, that's a very good example. A question, asking a question. That always helps to break apart stuck and sticky energy.
Yeah, it does.
When you get stuck on anything, and if you want to accumulate more universal entanglements contributing to you, it's just like what Andrea said, ask for it.
Yeah.
But ask not a question in a statement in a question, just a very simple ask. And again, I have to refer to Access because, to be honest, the pragmatic tools of Access, I love them. They use, how does it get better than that? What else is possible? Or give us a question that you use, Andrea, if you don't like the Access.
I don't have a question. I ask this is what I would like, and I get
It's not a question?
I'm not asking a question.
Oh, so what, how do you ask if it's not a question?
It's my energy.
Right.
I send the energy out because of what the energy is. So if you send hate out, I'm just giving you an example, what you get back, hate tenfold. And because I'm so aware and I work in a different frequency, I ask, okay, so this is what I would like, because I have a clarity of what I would like, okay? But it's obviously it's continuous work. But what I'm saying is I ask, this is what I would like, and I don't question how it's going to come, when it's going to come, why it's going to come, how, I don't care. I just ask. I send the energy out, and sometimes it's there within seconds. Sometimes it's there within the next step. Sometimes it's just, it comes because I ask. This is what I'm saying. When you truly send the energy out of what you're willing to receive, this is the key here. If you are willing to receive it, then what happens? The universe rearranges itself. This is not any tool. This is a universal law, if you will. This is the universe.
It is, Andrea. You know,
whatever you say, this is
law.
not tools. This is just a simple, basic thing. When you send out something, you receive it tenfold. Right now, we are making subconsciously a choice. We are sending energy out, and the universe gives it back to us tenfold.
There's another layer to that, Andrea. Yeah, there's another layer to that, and that's you know, what you get out is what you get is what you put out, and all that. That's all universal law, you know. But for me, the way that I work is the way that I ask is through my actions, you know. So, you know, if I want something, if I want to move towards something, then I act in a way that is conducive with that outcome, and that's how I say to the universe, I'm responsible enough for this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
You ask. It's like
but I ask with my actions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
It's like your energy,
Your co-creation.
your molecules, you become it. And it just comes to you. But we don't have a lot of people when I have clients. But how is it gonna come? When is it? Who cares? Just become it, and then that's the end of it.
Okay, so that's great. So we got a couple of different ways of looking at that. Dispelling, asking for contribution without asking, with actions, with a simple question. You can choose whatever you want to choose. we've just seen there's lots and lots of different ways of doing that. And yes, as you practice that, you become the energy of the question without having to ask it anymore. And sometimes, you know, we need to go back to, you know, to simple tools, maybe to the Neanderthals, you know, and just ask a question. Yeah. Or ask whatever, action it, feel it, perceive it, that type of stuff.
Yes, Martina, everything is like, what was I going to say? If we go back to the very basic thing, just very basic, energy, right? You send out the energy, you receive it, okay? Judgment, it's an energy.
Yeah.
Send it out, you receive it.
Get it back.
Ask is an energy. Money is an energy, okay? So what energy are you sending out at this present moment about money? Is that matching your purse? Is that matching your bank account? If it's a yes, okay, so what energy are you willing to receive so that changes? If we just talk about energy, just very, very simple, okay? So if there is an energy there that you don't like, what is it are you willing to receive, and what is it, you know, this is when Martina says that the question, you can ask, okay, so if I'm not willing to receive that, let's say somebody wants 100 grand, okay, but you might be judging that 100 grand, then it comes in because you might be judging a rich man or whatever, which comes back to judgment. So what energy are you willing to be, willing to receive, willing to give out?
Yeah.
100%. And I have the same process within my abundance as well, because, you know, there are some times that something might happen where I can make a lot of money from something, but I look at the situation, and if there's something that's not right in that situation, then I won't. And I'll use my judgment to say, do you know what? Just financial gain isn't enough here for me to do this. There has to be something else. And I found that in those times where I deny a course of action using judgment in a skillful way, it comes back to me in another way anyway.
Yeah.
That's right, what you were saying, Andrea.
That's great. Well, yeah, no, thanks for that, Andrea. So that was a really nice, you know, elaboration on receiving, on true receiving, staying out of judgment, being in allowance, going with the flow of the universe with what you want to create, and looking at it from an energetic perspective, you know. So going back to the topic today, the judgment, getting out of judgment, reframing it, looking at the gifts at the opposite of what it actually bears for us, what it facilitates, not validating other people's realities and getting yourself into that type of, you know, controversial universes, and really staying in your own truth and acknowledging, allowing other people's, you know, truths at the same time.
Yeah, brilliant.
So that's a bit of a summary there. So we've got quite a bit of stuff there. Is there anything you would like to add, you would like to ask, you would like to look at before we close it down?
Thank you. It's been really interesting.
Yes, thanks, Martina.
Yeah, this is great, Martina. Yeah.
Okay,
It
cool.
covered a lot.
Okay.
Can I just speak? Is Jill, was it Jill?
Jill, yeah.
Jill, is Jill there? Are you there, Jill?
I need to go, so I'll just say goodbye to everyone. You carry on
being there. Hey, we send
carry on, Lynn.
Okay, I'll find her another way anyway. That's okay.
Yeah,
I'll
Maggie,
as well.
if everyone drops off, do you want to stay on? If everyone else drops off, or
I don't know if we can do that. I'll tell you what. I'll find you on Facebook. I'm sure I can find you.
On Facebook, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to say goodbye as well now.
Yeah, me too.
Bye. Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Love you guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Martina.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
The recording is going onto the site, and we see you next week, Wednesday, 5 p.m.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.